Big thanks to Into the AM for helping me bring today's video to you. Use my coupon code RISTER or my affiliate links for 10% off of any order from Into the AM. Thanks again for helping to support my channel. This weekend, 2 tournaments will be happening on opposite sides of the world. While neither tournament is a major, both of them just being nationals, they're still very important tournaments in the eyes of spectators everywhere. These 2 tournaments are Low Tide City 2024 in Round Rock, Texas, and Kowloon 11 in Japan. Technically speaking, Kowloon 11 has actually already begun, meaning that I should really hurry up and get this video out before everything I say gets invalidated by the inevitable upsets. By the way, both seeding graphics that I'm using will be linked in the description. Now, let's get started by taking a look at the top 8 seeds of Low Tide City 2024. This year's iteration of LTC is the final Low Tide City, with the American Smash scene sadly losing another tournament series. But the first seed of LTC is Shadic, which makes sense for a lot of people in a lot of ways. Shadic is coming off of wins at 2 recent majors, both Cirque du CFL 3 and most recently the Luminosity Smash Invitational. Looking at this bracket, no one would call you crazy for saying that Shadic will just sweep the tournament and take grands through winner's side. The bracket path includes defeating Capitancito to make top 8, and then once there defeating MVD and Mudas twice to win the tournament. After all, Shadic has a winning decent record on every other top seed. And so, Shadic is entering LTC 2024 as the clear favorite to win. Coming in right behind Shadic is Mudas as the second seed, with the projected grands being a repeat of Cirque 3. Mudas' path to make top 8 includes wins over Doorstop and Anathema, which has the potential for upsets, as Mudas has dropped sets to both players before. And furthermore, Anathema is one of Mudas' most fought players, with their set count being nearly half and half. Assuming Mute makes top 8 though, Mute is seeded to defeat Dubuzz in winners semis, lose to Shadic in winners finals, beat Dubuzz again in losers finals, and then lastly lose to Shadic once more in grands. Assuming Mudas can make top 8, I think this path is fairly likely to happen, with the biggest threats actually being outside of top 8. The third seed, if you've been paying attention, is Dubuzz. Dubuzz is supposed to make top 8 by defeating Beastly and Pnut, which should happen, but could go awry if Pnut is playing hot. Once in top 8, as we've already covered, Dubuzz loses to Mudas in winners semis, and proceeds to tear through losers, defeating Lima and MVD, before losing again to Mudas. The interesting thing here is that Dubuzz had a really good run at the Luminosity Smash Invitational, and therefore might be capable of making upsets over the top 2 seeds. But only time will tell if that's in the cards for Dubuzz. The graphic that I'm using for this tournament is actually outdated, because coming into our 4th seed spot is MVD, not Lima, meaning that Stride Esports has 3 reps in this top 8 seeding. Funnily enough, MVD's path to top 8 is 2 Bayonettas, Geist and Lima. And since most Bayo mains hate this matchup, there's a good chance that MVD pulls out the wins here. Once in top 8 though, MVD is seeded to lose to Shadic, drop into losers, and defeat Pnut, before losing to Dubuzz. Now, the thing is, if MVD versus Pnut actually ends up happening, MVD will likely lose there, as Mega Man is considered one of the, if not the, definitive worst matchup for Snake. But against any other opponent, MVD could probably make it into loser semis as seeded. It's also worth noting that Snake is considered a really bad matchup for Corrin, so there's a possible chance that MVD could upset Shadic, but I don't think that's very likely. The 5th and number 6 seeds of LTC 2024 are Lima and Pnut, which means the graphic is outdated again, so let me just reveal the rest of it now. Pnut was originally the 9th seed but was moved all the way up to number 6, and Lima was the 4th seed but dropped to 5th, likely just to avoid a bracket conflict. Lima is seeded to lose to MVD in winners quarters, before dropping into losers and defeating Kobe to make top 8. Which I think will safely happen if it comes down to it. But I'd like to mention that Lima has a good chance to defeat MVD and make top 8 through winners instead. Once in top 8, Lima is seeded to beat Capitancito and then lose to Dubuzz. I'm not sure how Lima versus Capitancito would go if it ends up happening, but it sounds like it'll be an interesting set. Pnut is seeded to lose to Dubuzz in winners quarters. And while an upset could happen here, I don't think it will, meaning Pnut drops into losers and has to beat Ned to make top 8. Which I think is a fairly safe bet. Once here, Pnut is seeded to beat Anathema and lose to MVD. Both of these matchups are really good for Mega Man, so I think Pnut will actually go farther than seeded, at which point Pnut probably gets 4th, as Dubuzz would be waiting here for a run back. The 7th and 8th seeds of LTC 2024 are Anathema and Capitancito. Capitancito is seeded to lose to Shadic in winners quarters, before dropping into losers and defeating Omega. It's been a while since we've seen Omega at a larger tournament, so I'm not sure if Omega could pull off an upset here, but it's certainly possible. Once in top 8, Capitancito is seeded to lose to Lima, which again, I'm not sure how that'll go. Anathema, our last top 8 seed, is seeded to lose to Mudas in winner's quarters, which again, could go either way given their extensive set count history. Assuming Anathema loses, making top 8 will require Anathema to defeat 2B, aka Chase. And of the loser's side top 8 qualifiers, this one is the most likely to cause an upset, as a lot of people think that Chase is underseeded. If Anathema wins and makes top 8, Pnut is seeded to win in loser's 8ths, which I think will indeed happen if it comes down to it. As a side note, I do want to give a small shout out to the 4 players seeded to place 9th, those players being Kobe, Omega, Ned, and Chase. I think any of them, but most likely Chase, can definitely make top 8. Overall, my big takeaways from Low Tide City 2024 is that I believe Shadic is going to take the tourney through winner's side. Pnut will likely perform very well, and Chase will probably make top 8, despite not being seeded to. Now it's time for us to pivot on over and take a look at the top 8 seeds of Kowloon 11, the second large tournament this weekend that's taking place in Japan, and a tournament that is extremely top heavy in terms of talent. The first seed of Kowloon 11 is, understandably, Hert. Coming off of an amazing second place finish at Kagari B12 and also a win at Battle of BC6, Hert is the clear-cut first seed. To make top 8, Hert has to defeat 33 Parenbox, and once in top 8, Hert has to defeat Goblin in winner's semis, and then double eliminate Glutiny to win the tourney. I think this will end up happening, although the biggest threat to Hert's run is obviously Glutiny. Speaking of, Glutiny is the second seed. But Gluto's path is rife with strife, as Glutiny has to defeat Bayonetta main Mamo to make top 8, and then in winner's semis defeat Asimo. Glutiny has struggled a lot against Bayonetta mains in the past, and Glutiny has lost the last 2 sets against Asimo, so there's a good chance that Glutiny doesn't make winner's finals as seeded. However, at that point, Gluto is supposed to be double eliminated by Hert. The third seed of Kowloon 11 is Asimo. However, interestingly enough, Asimo has had a few inconsistent performances at last weekend's set of majors, so there's a chance Asimo gets upset before top 8. Assuming that doesn't happen though, Asimo is seeded to defeat Goroka to make top 8, and if Asimo loses to Glutiny, at that point the loser's bracket would consist of defeating Ryuo and Goblin before losing to Glutiny again in loser's finals. Of course, I'm not sure that Glutiny will defeat Asimo either way. The fourth seed is someone we haven't seen for a while, Goblin. Goblin has been in Japan for a hot minute, but truthfully is a bit of an unknown. Goblin is seeded to beat Ryuo to make top 8, and once there, lose to Hert. And in loser's bracket, Goblin is seeded to defeat Goroka before losing to Asimo. And to be honest, it's been so long since we've seen Goblin in the public eye that I'm clueless to how Goblin will perform. But it is worth noting that during the pair of majors last week, Goblin outperformed the original seeding, so perhaps that's a good sign. The 5th and number 6 seeds of Kowloon 11 are Ryuo and Goroka. Ryuo, who's seeded to lose to Goblin before top 8, has to make top 8 by defeating Roki the Isabel, before defeating 33 Parenbox and losing to Asimo. I think this will mostly go as seeded, as Ryuo is better at the Steve matchup than Tweak is, and I think Ryuo even has a chance to defeat Asimo if it comes down to it. Goroka, the Joker main, is seeded to lose to Asimo before top 8, and in loser's bracket has to defeat Futari no Kiyomi-A and Mamo before losing to Goblin. I actually think any of these sets could go the other way, as Ice Climbers is a volatile character, and Joker could do really well against Roy, so Goroka has the chance to either under or outperform. The 7th and 8th seeds of this tournament are Mamo, the Bayo, and 33 Parenbox, the Steve, both of whom we've recently covered in tournaments like Mayasumu Grand Wars. Mamo is seeded to lose to Glutiny, which again might go the other way. Assuming it doesn't, Mamo has to defeat Daigoro, the Korin, before losing to Goroka. If Mamo makes top 8 through winners, it'll definitely be a big win, but if that doesn't happen, I think bracket will mostly go as seeded. 33 Parenbox is seeded to lose to Hert in winner's quarters, which should definitely happen after Hert demolished Akola at Kagari B12, and in losers, 33 Parenbox has to defeat Marcos, the Rob, and is seeded afterwards to lose to Ryuo. And of course, the matchup is Steve favored, but again, Ryuo is much better at the matchup than the Diddy Kongs over in America, so it could go either way. Once again, I want to give a small shout out to the players who are seeded to place 9th. Those players being Futari no Kiyomi-A, Daigoro, Roki, and Marcos. Of these players, I think Futari no Kiyomi-A has the best chance to make top 8. But I'm personally hoping for Roki to make a big run, as it would be really cool to see an Isabel make top 8. And my wider predictions for this tournament is that Hert will probably win through winner's side. I think Glutiny is probably going to underperform, whether that be from Mamo's hands or Asimo's, and I think that Ryuo is going to go on a big run. But in general, Kowloon 11 is much harder to predict than LTC was, because Japanese Smash in general is way more unpredictable than Smash Bros anywhere else. I bet there's going to be 2 or 3 top 8 finishers who are like the 42nd seed or something and we've never heard of before. But no matter what happens, I'll be here to cover it all as it goes down this weekend. But for today, that's going to be it for today's video. Before I go, shout out to my patrons Seth Laster, Falsco333, Logan S, Persipam, Wawa, Mr. Sinister, Happy Feet, Oshiman, Mistybot, and my 2 patrons Iltis, Time and Blaze, and Ben L. Additionally, shout out my YouTube members DJ Jr., Defective, Boston R, SSBU, Kirby Fan, Nexus, Soko, and my 2 members Mike G, Wu-Tang Forever, and Stormtrooper. Also, shout out my gifted tier 2 members with our usernames Ruby Master, Kuroruko, LWB74, and Enchanted IBE. Lastly, extra special thanks to my tier 3 supporters Fat Blizzard, who says Dogs better than cats, Avadoon, who says Mr. Rights is the Go to Smash content, and Iltis, who says Shadic is top 3. If you want to support me using any of these methods, links are in the description down below. Don't forget to use my coupon code RISTER in order to get 10% off of any order from Into the AM. And lastly, I want to give one last sincere thanks to Let Me Fly for their continued support of my channel. Link to their Twitter page is also in the description. Don't miss tomorrow's upload, but until then, I've been Mr. Mice, and thank you all so very much for watching.